may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, y'all know I don't really like to get too serious on the channel. Y'all know that. Usually we just stick it to fantasy football. But I genuinely owe y'all probably the biggest thank you ever. In that, y'all know I am kind of at a crossroads in my life right now, graduating from the University of Texas with a couple degrees. I'm kind of faced with the decision, do I go to graduate school? Do I pursue that? Or do I pursue my dreams of just covering this full time? And I was really torn over the decision for a while now. But we have had so much support over on Patreon as of late that I think that, honestly, we can go for it. We can go for it, making this our full-time gig from now on. So thank you so much for everybody who's decided to support the channel. And I want to do something for y'all. I know we've been working on that Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide that is going to be available for those people supporting the show on Patreon very soon now. But let me know if there's something else that I can do. We are closing in on 250 people over there on Patreon. Let me know if I can set a goal. Like if we hit 300, I can come on and we can do a AMA with possibly my girlfriend or just something that y'all would like to see. Just go down to the comment sections. If you have any suggestions on what you would like to see for us to set a goal, and if we hit it over there on Patreon, maybe we just do it over there. Maybe we do it on the main fantasy football channel. But please just let me know. And what we are going to be doing in this video is we are going to be going through and we are going to be talking about pretty much every impact selection from day 3 of the NFL draft. And no, these players aren't anything close to what we saw in round 1. These players aren't anything close to what we saw on day 2. I want everybody to understand, especially for 2021, your expectations for these guys that are drafted on day 3 of the NFL draft. If you look at historical hit rates, they're not going to be high. These players are mainly drafted to be backups at the NFL level. No team is drafting a guy like, just say, Michael Carter Jr., expecting him to be a featured down running back after he falls all the way to the 4th round. Now, on our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, I dive into actual historical research. That way I can put the numbers in front of y'all. I can show you exactly what I'm talking about, and you don't just have to believe me for saying this. So, of course, I'm excited to bring y'all that after we get that finalized. But anyway, let's dive into it. Let's bring up Michael Carter Jr., who we just discussed. And here, y'all know that I am not a guy that is afraid of running a victory lap. Y'all know that I love to point out whenever I am right. And that's what we are going to be doing here with Michael Carter Jr. And coming into the NFL draft, some people had him as their running back 1, which was just straight up laughable. It was also laughable that people had him in the same tier of someone like Javonte Williams or Travis Etienne, but that was happening. People were excited about Michael Carter Jr. People were going, hey, Mason, you aren't watching the tape. Look at what he can do between the tackles. Look at his elite level agility. And I was saying, guys, he is undersized and he is slow. I don't care what his agility looks like. If you look at that profile historically, the chances of that ever becoming a running back 1 in fantasy, wherever they are drafted, are going to be extremely low. Now he falls to day 3 of the NFL draft. So literally every single box that you look for in a running back, you look for size, you look for speed, you look for draft capital, which will represent opportunity, and you look at receiving game capabilities. Now, Michael Carter Jr., out of those 4 boxes, only checks 1 of them. So I will say right now that despite him landing on the New York Jets, which looks like on paper it's a fantastic landing spot, I'm going to be avoiding Michael Carter Jr. I would much prefer going out and trying to put my eggs in the Tevin Coleman basket. And Tevin Coleman probably going to be cheaper. And Tevin Coleman, in my opinion, a much better running back with more upside. We have seen him before in Atlanta, and I know it was a different Tevin Coleman. I know he doesn't have that same type of juice. But even LaMichael Pirine last year looked good during stretches. Even LaMichael Pirine looked like he could play on all 3 downs. So what I am going to be saying the takeaway is from Michael Carter Jr. going to the New York Jets at the top of round 4 is the takeaway is people are going to get too excited. People are going to look at this landing spot, understand that, yes, it's a very good landing spot. If you would have saw Javonte Williams go here at the top of the 2nd round, we would be extremely excited. But the caliber of running back is just completely different with Michael Carter Jr. and him falling all the way down to day 3 when he's supposed to be one of the highest floor running backs in the entire draft. Just makes me want nothing to do with him. I think at the very best case scenario, you're getting someone that is going to be a low-end running back 2 in points per game, and that's the best case. I think the likely scenario is you're getting someone that you can really never start, and if you do, you're probably going to be expecting anywhere from 4 to 6 PPR points a game. So yeah, Michael Carter Jr., the takeaway here is he gets drafted to a great situation, which will probably make a bad running back overdrafted in fantasy. Please, guys, trust me on this one. Stay away from Carter Jr., despite whatever the reports may say during training camps. Okay, so now let's go over to a wide receiver that, honestly, I am willing to overlook the NFL draft capital with. And y'all know that I'm the first person to say NFL teams know more than we do. There's a reason that some of these guys that maybe the dynasty, maybe just the overall fantasy football community was a little bit too high on, they fall in the NFL draft. Generally, you see guys like Equanimeous St. Brown. You see guys like Hakeem Butler that we love going into the NFL draft, and then they fall, and it's for a great reason. They don't succeed at the NFL level. But here, I think people aren't understanding the context of this fall with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So with Amon-Ra St. Brown, what you have is you have a wide receiver that is the perfect example of someone that profiles to be a better fantasy option than what he is for his real life NFL team. And what I mean for that is pretty much the exact opposite of what we talk about with a player like Jalen Waddle, where we go, yes, it's great that Jalen Waddle is drafted as the wide receiver 2 back-to-back with Jamar Chase. It looks fantastic for the opportunity he should see on the field, but we have to understand that Waddle is going to be a completely different type of wide receiver than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And with Jalen Waddle, he is going to be the guy stretching the field. He is going to be the guy that improves the overall efficiency of the offense while players underneath maybe get more targets, while maybe Mike Gesicki is the guy that's actually targeted by Tua, or maybe it's Devontae Parker. Regardless of whoever it is, Jalen Waddle is going to make their life easier. Now, in the case of Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's the exact opposite of that. He is the player similar to Cooper Kupp. He is the player similar to Jarvis Landry that instead of running deep downfield, he's going to be running closer to the line of scrimmage. And in that role where he doesn't provide you that elite level speed to bring any type of efficiency to your offense, he's not going to be that valuable for the Detroit Lions. And that's why you saw him fall to the 4th round. But if he does secure the slot wide receiver role on the Lions, he is going to have some competition in that same area of the field with TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift. But in the case of Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think that if this fall leads to him falling drastically in fantasy drafts, maybe you look around, you go, okay, there are targets available to Detroit. Yes, the quarterback play is going to be disgusting, but the NFL draft capital with a 4th round slot wide receiver is kind of equivalent to maybe a Diami Brown, who's a field stretching option that went in round 3, if you're going to be talking about the expected overall volume. So please, this is the one case where we can look at the NFL draft capital and we can go, it's not everything, because fantasy and real life NFL value, they are two completely different sides of the coin. Okay, so now let's go over to a running back that we were extremely excited about going into the 2020 college season, and then he falls flat on his face. Let's talk about Chuba Hubbard getting drafted with the 21st pick in the 4th round by the Carolina Panthers. And here with Chuba Hubbard, I think that this is a fantastic spot for him because we knew that he was going to be going day 3 of the NFL draft. Nobody thought that he was going to be going within the top 100 picks, and if you did, you were lying to yourself. But in the case of Chuba Hubbard, he's the exact opposite of a Michael Carter Jr., where you look at a Michael Carter Jr., you go, yes, he maybe has a decent floor, where at the very minimum, he's going to be a pass-catching running back in the NFL, where with Chuba Hubbard, I think that we can say he has a floor that he doesn't make it to the 2021 season. It is somewhat believable that maybe this is a player that is similar to Jeremy McNichols from a few drafts ago, where, yeah, the dynasty community liked him, but he gets cut during training camp, and then he just bounces around from NFL team to NFL team. That's in the range of outcomes for Chuba Hubbard. But what's also possible is it's also possible that maybe 2020, he just had his mind elsewhere off of football. I mean, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and of course, it's not just a completely valid excuse for Chuba Hubbard to go out and do whatever he wants. But if you're ever going to have an off season, if you're ever going to have a bad year, I think 2020 was the year to do that with a valid excuse. So now you look at a player that was once seen as an elite option. I mean, going into the 2020 season, he was one of the favorites to win the Heisman, and now he goes to the Panthers. And what is great about this selection is you are never going to have to look at Chuba Hubbard and go, do I start him or do I not start him? Because the answer is simple. If Christian McCaffrey is healthy, you never consider putting Chuba Hubbard in your starting lineup. Yet, if CMC goes down, like we saw last season, then all of a sudden, Chuba Hubbard becomes Mike Davis. He has the potential to be a running back 1 in fantasy if he can come anything close to the ceiling that we saw way back in 2019. So with Hubbard, I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that this is a great spot because he's going to be taking touches from McCaffrey. Obviously, I am not on crack, but you're looking at it and going, he becomes that same type of player as a Tony Pollard. He becomes a backup running back that can possibly handle a full down role if the starter ahead of him gets injured. So I think that this was almost best case scenario with Chuba Hubbard, a player that does have a very, very low floor, but also a very high ceiling. All right, so now let's stay in the 4th round. Let's go back to the wide receiver position, and let's talk about Tylan Wallace, a wide receiver that took a dive in the NFL draft. Honestly, the biggest fall that you could have expected. And now with Wallace, he's kind of similar to Chuba Hubbard, and it's funny. I mean, you have to wonder what's going on at Oklahoma State. But here, he was a player that after 2018, people were very excited about him. I mean, he had a massive season at 19 years old. If you were playing in a Devi Dynasty Football League, people were actually rostering him there. People thought that he was going to be one of the top wide receivers in the entire draft class. Then he gets hurt in 2019, comes back in 2020 and puts together an impressive season. So I actually like Tylan Wallace coming into the NFL draft. But this is an example of a player that I liked. The NFL tells us, hey, they're not that valuable, and he doesn't have the same type of excuse as an Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he just profiles to be someone that really isn't going to help their offense, but if he gets on the field, he should be soaking up targets. No, that's not Tylan Wallace. He also goes to the Ravens, a situation where you should not be expecting many passing targets to go around, combined with the fact that you're also going to have competition on that Ravens offense with Rashad Bateman, with Marquise Brown, and I actually think Devin Duvernay as well as Sammy Watkins are probably favorites over Tylan Wallace for the wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 roles on those offenses. I mean, even Miles Boykin, I think you could look at, and him going into year 3 maybe is a better wide receiver than Tylan Wallace at this point. So Wallace for 2021, literally no upside at all in fantasy, because even if he defied all odds and was still able to come away as the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, which is extremely unlikely, he's still the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore. I mean, what exactly does that bring value-wise? Not that much, I will tell you that. Okay, so now let's bring up another player that landed in a good situation, but I had to just completely avoid him at this point. It's going to be Bryce Jordan, who lasted all the way to the 5th round going to the Houston Texans. I mean, this is a player that disappointed at his pro day. This is a player that also doesn't really have the size. So I wanted to compare him to Irv Smith Jr. coming into the draft, and I was actually drafting him in a lot of dynasty rookie drafts at the beginning of the 3rd round in those tight end premium formats. But now, falling all the way to the 5th, I think we can look at Bryce Jordan and we can go, you know what? There are enough red flags with this situation that if someone wants to bump him up because he lands with the Houston Texans and it looks like Houston should have a decent amount of targets available, I'm going to be completely off, because I think we could look at this and go, you know what? Jordan Atkins, probably a better option. Kahale Waring, probably a better option as well. So Bryce Jordan, not someone you need to be paying attention for with fantasy. Okay, now let's pull up a player that really fits the mold of something that happens every year. This is Kenneth Gainwell going to the Philadelphia Eagles with the 6th pick in the 5th round. And this happens every season, guys. You always see a player that the dynasty community is very high on. Some of the NFL draft community is as well. And then he just falls so far down in drafts, yet the fantasy community is unwilling to completely let go of their prior evaluation of Kenneth Gainwell. Like I said, the perfect examples that we can bring up in recent memory are going to be Hakeem Butler and Equanimeous St. Brown. And then you actually saw those players getting overdrafted in fantasy that year, even with us seeing what the NFL thought of them. So please, guys, do not look at Kenneth Gainwell going to the Philadelphia Eagles as a player that's going to hurt Miles Sanders at all, because that's not the case. You don't have to worry about that at all with Gainwell. I think that he goes into that situation and essentially he is just a slightly better version of Boston Scott. Even if he is better than Boston Scott, it's not going to take anything away from Miles Sanders. Please do not think it will. Kenneth Gainwell, also someone I have no interest in drafting in fantasy, because I think there's always going to be someone in one of my leagues that's willing to take him higher. Okay, so our last player we are going to be talking about is just a quick shout out to Sam Ellinger going at the very end of the 6th round. Guys, if y'all don't know, I'm graduating from UT. Sam was our starting quarterback for all 4 years that I was here. So love to see him going to the NFL. Of course, it's sad to see that he's never going to be a starter. Hopefully, he can get a career as a long-time backup quarterback, just quietly getting a bag every single season. But, I mean, getting drafted at the end of the 6th, that's probably unlikely. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And I want to remind everyone, our rookie rankings are now updated over on Patreon. If you go over there, you should see them. And our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide should be out later this month. But yeah, that's it. And I will see y'all with the video. Maybe not tomorrow, but definitely sometime soon. I want to give a big thank you for everyone supporting the show in Benjamin, Bill, Jason, Matthew, Hutton, Sean, Freddie's Berto, Andy, Frederick, and Chris.